Okay, so this week it came out on a podcast that Dewayne Wade was on that his child is now Zaya and uses she, her pronouns. Mm-hmm. And Twitter is Twittering.
Can we just cut the cameras?
Dead ass.
Okay. So, Dewayne Wade in this podcast episode has social media asking what is going on. And immediately, as soon as the article came out, the video came out, I think it was like late last night, like when everybody got it, like late yesterday evening. Mm-hmm. I literally said, cut the cameras. I don't want to hear any more conversation about like what's going on, because I can see the Shade Room posting it on Instagram, and you got all that negativity that comes out with that, and I just was not interested in that. It's already been a long month.
Yes.
The Lizzo stuff, Saucy Santana. It's just like been back to back. Y'all already know, because I had to cut the comments out on y'all a couple of times, and I'm gonna continue to do it. But you know, recently Dewayne Wade has came out and spoken about their son,
their daughter.
Well, would it be the daughter now? But but Dewayne Wade, and that was another conversation because Dewayne Wade did say son in that conversation, but he did refer to Zaya as she.
Right. Now,
so how does that work?
So I think that it could very well be just a mistake on his behalf, where he referred to Zaya as son and should have been referring to Zaya as daughter. But it could also be like, I think, and I don't think it's intentional on his part at all, because I don't think he's admitted that he's not very as well versed as some people might try to say that he is. But from my perspective, it does a really good job of ungendering and like shifting our relationship to gender with understanding, like, not understanding pronouns as a gender identity, which I really appreciate, because my pronouns are not necessarily, they're not at all a gender identity. They are my pronouns, right? And so Zaya could very well still identify as a boy and just say, I am a boy, but I use she, her pronouns. And I love that. So that's what I was thinking that was happening, and that very well could be the case. Yeah, we wouldn't know a thing, but I think that sorry to this child, but I do think that it's very beautiful, irrespective of Zaya's gender identity, because it does a necessary thing in both ways of talking about Black fathers and their relationship to Black LGBTQ kids, as well as talking about like the ungendering of pronouns. Yes, which Ashley Shackelford actually. I was just going to mention that. I took a look at their piece earlier this week, so I really loved it. I think that I did have some pushback. What was your pushback? I always do. Yes, and I think it's important that we always have pushback, because we are constantly like learning, right? And we will never be done until we are dead. Absolutely. And like it's just stuff, and people get so not a think piece, but everything is. Even me deciding I'm going to use Postmates or Uber Eats is a think piece. Who's going to be cheaper? Who's going to get there? Like, it's always going to be something. So, like I said, I was extremely nervous when it first came out. I did not want it to be a situation where it's just more fuel to the fire of steady like burning this homophobia all on the Shade Room, all these blogs on Instagram and stuff, thoughts. You know, they do that a lot, like thoughts, and I just didn't want that. That stuff is triggering. It is very triggering. So I'm glad that the conversation is coming up. Like you said, it's something about, you know, this thing with Black fathers and stuff, because, you know, this is no shade. I love my father dearly. But when I first came out to my father and came out and said I was gay, I came out to my 9th grade teacher, and my father found out about it, and my teacher was like, you know, something's going on with your son. It seems like he might be a little bit suicidal. These are the things. And my father had said to me that he would kill me before he lets me go to hell. And I don't know how old I was in the 9th grade, but that scared the shit out of me. That scared me. So seeing this, I'm not, you know, necessarily celebrating something that should be done anyway.
but I am like, okay, I love that for them. Yeah. I love that for Zaya. I love that for them. But I'm also thinking, what is going on in Zaya's head? Because this might be seeming all cute to some of us, but this might be even more traumatizing for them to like live this life publicly.
Yeah.
So what was your pushback on the podcast?
I think it had a bit to do with that. It wasn't with the podcast. It wasn't even really with Dewayne Wade, because I think that it's really important for, especially cis fathers, to really grapple with their like understanding of gender and sexuality, irrespective of whether or not their child is LGBTQ. Period. However, my frustration, I think that the response to the video has to look two different ways. I think that black queer and trans folks have a right to celebrate and take solace in like Dewayne Wade's words and his actions, and in Gabrielle Union's words and actions around Zaya's life, because I think that so many of us know what it means to grow up in families where they don't look like that, where the response to our sexuality and our gender, especially for me as a queer and trans person, does not look like that from my families, especially from my fathers, but also especially from my mothers. However, my pushback comes with how cis het folks have responded. I think that from what I've seen on my timeline,
I haven't seen it,
and not like the bigoted cishet folks, because that's to be expected.
Okay.
I'm talking about the cishet folks who are in social justice spaces, who are the intellectuals and organizers and so forth and so on, where the response was like, "Oh, like this is worth celebrating, and this is really great, and there should be more parents like this doing this, blah blah blah," and it doesn't sit well with me, because that's not what your response should be. Your response should be, okay, other cishet folks who have children, how are we making the world possible for more parents to look like this for our queer and trans family? Like, not about you celebrating this one man, this one family who do not at all change your material reality because you're another cishet person. It really should be about like how you are engaging other cishet people and what you can do to make sure that our lives are able to look a lot like Zaya's in terms of parenting. And so I really I don't like that response, because to me it does two things. It acts as if they are not guilty of cis heteronormativity, which they are, right? Because they are already cis het, and so therefore they already benefit from cis sexism and heterosexism. And it also separates like, or it turns this thing into an individualistic thing, and it's not individualistic. Dewayne Wade and his family are one piece of a much larger puzzle that cishet people have to really sit with and reckon with, and they haven't. And from what I've seen on my timeline, of course it looks different across the internet, but on my timeline it's been your April Rains and other like blue check cishet people who want to like, and not just April Rain, because there's been a lot of black men too, like Mark Lamont Hill.
Mark Lamont Hill said something?
He celebrated. He was like, yeah, this is really dope. And his response wasn't bad. That's what I want to make clear. The responses weren't bad at all. It just doesn't do the job that they should be doing. The response to that video from cishet people should look like, okay, we see the example here. Now, what can we do to make sure that this is the reality for the rest of the black, queer, and trans folks in our community?
Period. How are you going to step up?
Right. And it doesn't look like that. The conversation is not happening that way. And I don't think that enough cishet people are doing that work in general.
Do you think it's another thing where they're kind of like representation type of thing, where it's just like,
it's going to be another
good. Like, yes, this looks really good. I'm so happy about it.
It's going to be another thing where we place people on pedestals only for them to inevitably fall from it. And then we get disappointed from them, or get disappointed in them, and then we cancel them, and then we do all the things. And I don't want it to look like that. I want cishet
somebody's
people,
real life.
Right. This is a child's real reckoning with their gender and sexuality, and a real family working through what it means to love someone who is living outside of the norm. In public, hearing all, like Dewayne Wade, since he retired, has not, I mean, to my knowledge, has not done any has not done any like major interviews that are around his basketball career, or at least if he has, it hasn't been about his career. It's been about his child. And while I do think that's honorable, and I love that he's taken on the role of doing that, I also think that it's the responsibility not of the media, because the media is going to be the media, but of other people who know what's right, to stand in the gap and say, Dewayne Wade is not alone in this, and this is how I'm reckoning with this as a cishet parent, or this is how I want to work with other cishet parents to make sure that this is what we can make possible for queer and trans futures, right? That's not being done. What's being done is, oh, look, let's celebrate them, and we know that inevitably someone's going to fall from this pedestal because no one is perfect. And so I'm having a hard time with the response to that from cishet people. And generally, I'm also thinking a lot about Zaire, her brother, and the other children in their family. I just want to make sure, like I remember reading an article a while back where Tina knows. Tina lost him, but Tina knows. She took Beyonce and Solange to therapy so that Solange could know how to deal with Beyonce's upcoming fame. And I really appreciated that, because it said to me that there was care in the family for all children and not just one. And I know that Gabrielle and Dewayne Wade are caring for their children. That's very clear. But I also know what it means to be a child who is having to be in the shadows of another person in your family who is getting a lot of attention around a certain thing, and no one really checking in with you about how you feel. And so I'm also thinking a lot about those children too, Zaire in particular, around what it is that they're feeling on the day-to-day when they aren't publicly embracing their sibling, and aren't publicly responding to critiques and criticisms from critics.
Because Zaire did post on Instagram. He did defend,
and I love that.
Yeah,
but
I did
I'm just
too.
wondering what it looks like on the back end of things, and hoping that they're all being taken care of.
Now, I was kind of disappointed, and you talked about media going to do with media, and Complex ran an article and said that made it seem as though Zaire was transitioning.
Yes,
and I was like,
I saw that.
This is why y'all need to do y'all research. This is why y'all need to have folks who can speak on this stuff. You should have gotten a person who speaks on this, right about this, so it can be covered correctly. Because now you put this out, and now people will run with this. Oh, child is transition, and even if they were, they can. But it's just that's not the story. And I was just kind of looking at it. I was just like, oh my God! I want people to handle it a little bit more delicate, because this is a child we're talking about, and this whole thing is public. And I apparently they've known about this for a while, because in the interview, Dewayne Wade has said, when Zaire was young, they noticed some things that were not what their brothers were doing. And then he had a conversation with himself, what would I do if my child came and told me that they were gay?
Yeah.
And they had to think about that. And that's when he came up with he said that I'm the one that's stuck in the box. It's nothing wrong with them. It's something wrong with how I see it. I need to clean these glasses. And I think Gabrielle Union had a lot to do with this. Once again, Black women saving the day. And I'm thankful in this case. I'm appreciative of Gabrielle Union doing. I know this is this is a big public family, and every time they posted pictures, people have said very nasty things, very nasty, disgusting things about this child.
And they continue to love her out loud, which I really love.
Yes, and that's a lot.
It is.
That's a lot. So I was reading a tweet from one of my faves, Jatella, Deshaun's best friend, who posted and in response to saying that this is not necessarily something that we should be just celebrating for a cishet person doing what they should be doing. What do you think about that?
I agree. That was my whole point. I think is I don't think that was my entire point, because I do think that there is room to celebrate for as queer folks, Black queer folks who grew up around families that never really held us and never really loved us out loud or in private, and still don't, right? But I absolutely agree with him because there is a responsibility, like, for everyone to not like make something, to not celebrate someone for being less violent than others. Like, and I think that's what Jatella was getting down to is there, you have a responsibility to not go off and fucking celebrate every officer who doesn't murder you the moment they see you, right? And in the same way, like, cis heterosexist violence is just as violent as anti-black police violence. It is like it is state sanctioned violence, and that's what Jordan was saying. And so I think that I really do appreciate them for that perspective, because it was mine from the beginning, and that people were doing way, like, a lot. And that was my point with mostly cishet folks. I don't want to police how black, queer, and trans folks respond. I know that Jatella would, but but cishet folks, I am especially like bothered by with that response, because
girl,
that's you're doing the wrong. That's the wrong response. What are you doing to make sure that the Zayas of the world don't have to deal with the bigoted ass folks that Zaya is having to engage?
Yeah.
And actually, how are you engaging the biggest in the comment sections who you know in real life?
Yeah,
right.
Come on.
To make sure that Zaya can be celebrated more publicly and openly without the harm that they experience,
including turning the comments off.
So I agree, and I think that it was a salient point. So
Zaya, I think also, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing to like protect Zaya? Because this is a family thing, but Zaya still has to go out into the real world. Right. They have to go to school. So are you out here having conversations with other cisgender folks who got kids and stuff, and who don't identify as queer or trans or any of these things, but might be out here being trash? Exactly. We just had a conversation about Camilla, whatever her last name is.
Camilla Cabello.
Yes, who was saying like all this racist stuff that she was putting out, like, well, girl, I was young and ignorant. It was like, but girl, the stuff that you were saying was affecting folks. Like, yeah, you were young, but it was other young black folks who were experiencing your anti-blackness and your racism and stuff.
Right.
So, girl, like, what about that? And this is not something new. I've seen trans people when I was in high school in 2005. Mm-hmm. There was a guy named Issachar who was gay, who wore nails and stuff and did whatever. And I remember the violence that they experienced when I was in high school. And I think about what I could have done to like protect, because I wasn't as out, but I saw that it was difficult for them to even walk around in school or anything. Like, people just were very ugly to them, and they started to do me the same way as I got older.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that we explain, like, that you got a chance to explain, like, gender and sex and all that, because I think some people do get it confused, and they automatically think because Zaya is now Zaya, and now that they might be transitioning, but we don't know that. And everybody's journey is like their journey. We can't be saying, oh, well, this is normally what happens, because there's no such thing as normal.
There truly is not. And I think before even talking about gender and sex and sexuality, I think people really have to complicate their understanding of transitioning itself. A lot of folks, when they say transitioning, they're only responding or talking about medical transitioning. But not every trans folk or every trans person that transitions is interested in doing it medically or can do it medically. But transitioning is simply like shifting from one assigned identity to another that you have taken on, that you have always been, that you have embraced, right? And so, like, that doesn't mean that you are necessarily going from female to male or male to female, or that you are going to be necessarily non-binary or whatever. It means that you have decided to live openly in your transness and whatever that looks like, and you have transitioned.
Period.
And so I hate when people use transitioning only to talk about like medical transitioning, because it is.
Seems like they'd be obsessed with this.
It's very transmisogynistic. It's very cis-sexist. It's very classist, and it's really biodeterminist. So gender is not sexuality. Is not sex, right? So your gender is oftentimes what you're assigned at birth because of your assigned sex. So to be clear, all these things are social constructs in very different ways. Gender, sex, and sexuality are all very different social constructions. But
social construction,
right?
What do you mean? This is normal.
So when you're born typically, not always, but typically you're born either with a penis or a vagina. Mm-hmm. Because of that, you are assigned male or female, and due to that, you're then assigned girl or boy. But we all know that there are people who, well, maybe we all don't know, but there are some people who are born as intersex, and they have like different genitals, or they have some of the same genitals, or they have different hormones, or whatever it might be, right? Mm-hmm. But then there are people who just simply are born with a penis or vagina and later grow up to not identify with the gender their sex forced them to being assigned. Mm-hmm. So, for example, myself, I'm non-binary. I was born with a penis, but I don't identify as male. I don't identify as a man. I identify as non-binary. Mm-hmm. And so my gender is non-binary. I'm a non-binary person. It's not a third gender. It is I am not gendered. That's why I identify as non-binary, but I don't want to identify as agender because a lot of times agender is also seen as a gender. Agender being one word, agender. So yes, and then sex is again the genitalia you are born with, but that's also assigned and socially constructed because what people see is just a penis or a vagina. Mm-hmm. They don't see anything else. But
are you paying attention to J.K. Rowling?
Right. But sex is determined by so much more than just that. It's determined by your chromosomes and your hormones and so many other things that are not checked at birth, and most times won't get checked at all in your life. Mm-hmm. And so it's also socially constructed in just a very different way. And so, but what they are not is they're not the same. Gender and sex are not the same. But people oftentimes will try to separate the two also to be very transmisogynistic. Well, you may not be, you may be woman identified, but you're still a male because you have a penis. No. No. If she's a trans woman, she's a trans woman. If she's a trans woman, she's a woman. And that's just on period. She's not a male.
I don't know how many times we have to have this conversation.
Over and over and over again.
They be like, no, natural.
No, there's no such thing as natural.
It is no such thing.
And actually, we are working on a series at Warrior Voice on the construction of natural too. So be
yes, absolutely.
But yeah, so gender, sexuality, and sex are all very different things, very much socially constructed in their own way. And people shouldn't base their understanding off of any of those things off of very limited access or to understanding something, or very limited understandings of something, because it's about so much more than the very small things we learn in our lives, in our lifetimes.
Absolutely. So would Zion now be their dead name?
Well, I actually don't like the term dead name, and a lot of trans folks don't like the term dead name.
Okay.
I mean,
because I'm looking at this article about Complex, and they said Zion. So I wonder, like, how does that work?
Actually, I say a lot of trans folks don't like the word dead name. A lot of trans folks do use that word. I do not like that term.
Okay.
I like birth name.
Okay. That sounds good.
Because that person's not dead. Like. And
they never
really
yes. Okay. I get it. I feel
like it's just a different part of who they are, and oftentimes was never who they were ever meant to be.
Yes.
And
see,
so
I love it. See how we learning? I love it.
Absolutely. So yeah, Zion would be her birth name, but we really don't know. Maybe they still like to go by Zion. We really don't know. All we know is that Zaya is now her name. So,
absolutely. And it ain't like we're going to meet her anyway anytime soon.
No soon.
What is the purpose of all that? If we're graced with their presence, then, so be it. But
yeah. I would actually really love to sit down and talk with the whole family. I really, really would, because I think that there's something just really powerful about that. And I think that the people having these conversations really have to be black queer folks, black queer and trans folks, who know how to really engage this conversation.
Like, yes, and
in a way that a lot of these folks do not know how to.
Yeah, because it's just like y'all be bringing up the questions and like bringing up the conversations, but y'all have a language,
right?
and it's be very surface. And I think if y'all have the right person to guide you all, there will be no questions left to be asked.
Yeah.
There won't be no simple mistakes being made.
Right. So, I mean, my good sis, Gabby, Dwayne, y'all see this? Let me
Yes, please reach out. And their information will be below. But thank you all so much. We always enjoy having Deshaun on to give us, some commentary on some things. I'm not asking for anybody to give any comments on it. I just want people to listen and pay attention, and that's it. Keep all your negative comments to yourself. Until next time, we'll talk to you later. Bye.